Oh, it's that time once again. It's time for Trek Central Weekly. Oh my lord, here we are. Hello everybody, how you doing?
Doing good.
It's that time once again.
Here we go.
It's
I'm
time
getting some feedback on the
for Trek.
There we go.
That's muted. Hello, right, well, welcome, Trek Central. I am joined by some of the best minds in the Alpha Quadrant. Commander Brie, AJ Halliwell. Welcome, how are you doing?
Doing good.
Good. Beautiful weather. Can't complain. Star Trek on.
Good stuff. I mean, yeah, the weather's always beautiful when Star Trek is in the air. Does that sound cheesy? That sounds corny. I don't know. Let's just go with it. We've got a history lesson today. Yeah, Professor A.G. Halliwell is in the building. Open your tech books to page 47 because we're going for a journey. That's what we're going to do. Hi, everybody in the chat. How you doing? Let us know where you're dialing in from. I'd love to know. I always like to know. I'm a bit nosy. We're still waiting for the one person from Bozeman, Montana. If you don't know, then you just won't know. But if you're calling in from Bozeman, Montana, tell us. Say hi. Awesome. Before we do get going, some housekeeping. If you haven't already, follow us on Twitter at The Trek Central. And also go to our brand spanking, deliciously new website, trekcentral.net, for all of your Star Trek news and needs. And it's a really good website. Go there now. Well, not now. Go there after this live stream because, like I said, AJ has a lot of interesting tidbits. No pressure, AJ. No pressure at all. Also, we are prioritizing super chats today. So if you have a burning question for either myself, AJ, or Brie, drop us a super chat and we will read your question out and maybe kickstart some sort of discussion. So, as I said, history, hidden stories in the Star Trek universe. AJ has a list, I hope. What have we got to kick us off?
Well, so, and like I was saying, so my approach to Star Trek trivia, I've been a Star Trek fan since circa 1999. So the heyday of the internet, in my opinion. I've seen a lot of websites, and at this point, we're 20 years on, my favorite thing are the stories that have not been told 100,000 times, the background pictures that are not in literally every single Star Trek magazine, and kind of even I don't want to say surface level fans, but the more casual Star Trek fans have, probably seen and heard these stories before. So at this point, I really love to find the stories that add detail and flavor beyond that. So hopefully I found a few interesting things that through the years, some Star Trek fans have not necessarily heard of. And at this point, I have found that there are certain kind of Star Trek reference materials that a lot of those stories tend to get retold over and over again in. So I love the Deep Space Nine companion, the Next Generation companions, the TNG technical manual. I've bought 3 or 4 TNG technical manuals in my lifetime. Because I use them up and they fall apart over time. And the encyclopedias especially, very expensive to replace when you're flipping through them as a teenager. So lately my favorite source for kind of older, interesting Star Trek tidbits has been the Internet Archive, of all places. So when you think of the Wayback Machine, this is a website that not just keeps a historical log of websites, which is an important element to, I think, kind of Star Trek history digging, because you can look up things like Drex files and his notes on designing ships and sceneries and props and all those fun things. But they also have a book section. So the Internet Archive also has a library element, and it's got books that through the years I didn't even know existed that tell kind of some background information about Star Trek. Things like what's his name? James Van Hise wrote 34 reference books about Star Trek.
34.
And that was 34. It was kind of pseudo independently published, and they were pseudo unofficial most of the time.
Right.
And all feature titles that are kind of just a little off about Star Trek, like Next Gen and the Deep Space Experience, a Trek explanation. So I think there was probably some copyrights being avoided there. But a lot of the information inside the books is still really interesting. And it's things like the background information of episodes that I don't know exactly how he got them, but stuff that I have not seen necessarily repeated 100 times in other sources. But and since most of those come from the early 90s, that is stuff about Next Generation and Deep Space Nine primarily. I don't think I've seen any James Van Hise info on Voyager yet.
Right.
But I was flipping through just today, actually, looking at something from Assignment Earth, which is one of my favorite episodes of the original series. And when I think of trivia that most people know, and by most people, I mean, when I was first watching Star Trek, this is something my mom told me just as an off-the-cuff fact. Like, oh, Assignment Earth, that was supposed to be kind of like a pilot for its own show, and that was Gene Roddenberry's idea of, making double money off of Star Trek or something like that. But it turns out that Assignment Earth, yes, it was written by Gene Roddenberry, of course, it was written by his ideas, but it actually started off as a separate idea. So it was a half-hour pilot about Gary Seven and Roberta Lincoln. Then she kind of had a few different names, Roberta Robertson, I think, that it evolved over time before Star Trek was even an element of that. So they had kind of a half-hour script with no mentions of Spock, the Enterprise, or any of that. Just an agent from an alien planet who was human that had kind of had to battle time travel interferers. And it kind of reading through this in one of the old reference books, I was thinking, this kind of reminds me of Future Guy from Enterprise. And I don't think that that's that a formal connection there exists, but it was really interesting. I had found some other resources about Assignment Earth and the real, the details that went into the sets and the costumes and the various versions of the script of that, including that at one point early on in the script. So when the episode actually starts, it makes a lot of use of NASA footage, and that was kind of a cost-saving element because you got to use sci-fi type footage without having to pay so much for new models or anything like that. But one of the versions of the script, once they did decide, okay, the station doesn't want to buy Assignment Earth, this spinoff, let's reuse the content and make it a Star Trek episode. At that point, it was supposed to open with the crew of the Enterprise watching an episode of Bonanza on the view screen. And that was kind of going to be their announcement of, and we're in the year 1968 while they're watching Bonanza on the screen. So I thought that was that was kind of two interesting facts about Assignment Earth that I had never heard before. The Bonanza element and that there was more element to it being its own show than just, this is an episode of Star Trek that was also meant to be a pilot. It was a pilot that didn't work, so it was modified a little bit into an episode of Star Trek.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's and I want to play a game in a second, because one thing that you particularly AJ do a lot is, as someone that contributes a lot to Memory Alpha, is there's always that kind of what is canon, what's alpha canon, what's beta canon. We'll get there in a second. First of all, we do want to say hello to Amir Alhadwan. Yes, thank you very much for the super chat. You're not the real Picard, but you'll have to do. Yeah, I know, but we do have Commander Brie. So, instant upgrade, right? There we go. Right, game. Okay. Hello, everybody in the chat, by the way. And we're getting people from Chicago, Illinois. I think I saw a Liverpool as well. Fellow countrymen, hello. Hope you're all doing well. Do get involved in the chat. I want to get you all involved in this game here, because I've been inspired by what AJ just said, and also my own canon question. So, canon or not canon? Okay. So what we're gonna do here?
Trivia? Is there a right and wrong answer, or am I?
No. This is purely right. So here's what we're gonna do. Okay, I'm going to tell you two things, okay? And what you have to do is you have to determine what is alpha canon, as in real canon, or what is beta canon, i.e. probably not official canon, it's in a book somewhere. Does that make sense? So basically, if I tell you one thing and it's alpha, it's happened in my life. If it's beta, it could have happened maybe, alright? So I'm going to go first. And then Brie, you go next, and then AJ, you go next, okay? And what we want to do in the chat, alpha canon is 1, beta canon is 2. So the first thing I say, if you know, when I've said my 2 things, if you think, I don't know, let's just go. Let's see what we can do. So I'm going to say the first thing. If you think it's memory, if you think it's alpha canon, 1. If you think it's beta canon, 2. All right, okay. Oh God.
I know. I'm not prepared at all.
Pressure's on. I'm doing it on the fly. Okay, so I once had a chat with Dominic Keating, and I asked him to call me Stinky, and he did. Next, I am a quarter Ukrainian. So, right. So, which is alpha and which is beta?
Do you care if I go first? I just can't imagine him asking him to call you Stinky. So I want to say that one's beta, but who knows?
What do you reckon, AJ?
I'm gonna take the opposite and say that Dominic Keating is alpha, and just so we can have a person who's right here. But if we were being true to alpha and beta, alpha would be, we know it is a fact. Beta is that it's somebody wrote a fan fiction or wrote about it also be. So they could both be true. One just didn't happen. Does that make sense?
All right. Okay. So here we go. So the conversation with Dominic Keating is alpha canon. Yeah. So basically what happened is we went to Destination Star Trek a couple of years ago, and him and Connor Trenier, they were doing a script reading, and we thought that they were going to have that script reading be them reading Shuttle Pod 1. Turns out they decided to read a script from Amok Time and do it with a load of beer, and it didn't really make any sense, but it was funny. And I got the script, and I took it up to Dominic Keating and asked him to sign it, and I asked him to make it out for Stinky, because that's what he asks to Paul to call him in his little fantasy daydream. There we go. And he obliged. He laughed. It's obviously been a long time since he's done it. And he looked at me, he's like, "Are you okay?" And the answer to that is no, I'm not okay. But there we go. I have a script somewhere in the studio which is made out to Stinky. Right.
So the story I want to hear
I know.
there is this is you purchased a script to Amok Time at an event and got him to sign it, or they both read from a script and you somehow got a copy of the script they were reading. And then in any circumstance that you were able to turn that around quickly and get an autograph is very impressive. And I would love to hear more about, and where you can expand on that is beta canon. Write fan fiction about it.
And we will
I'll buy that novel.
We will expand on it in beta canon for sure. The truth is nowhere near as exciting. We paid to go to a script read, and they gave us the script, and I had the script, and I was really confused that they'd done a script reading of Amok Time, and I just thought there's a joke in The Simpsons where Sean Connery had signed a baseball card or something like that, and comic book guys like, "Hey, this is $5." That's terrible impression. And I just thought it would just be really funny if I got Dom Keating to sign a script of Amok Time and make it out to Stinky. So it's probably my most prized Trek possession, to be completely honest. But there we go. It's alpha canon. Commander Brie, your turn. So two statements.
Well, you gave me the idea with celebrity meetings, so I'm just going to keep to that topic. So
I am too.
Either I had a few too many drinks at a bar that was Star Trek themed with Denise Crosby, or I went out to dinner with Aaron Eisenberg and his family in a cosplay from a Not Safe for Work anime.
Oh my god. Okay.
I am jealous of either of those possibilities, although I don't know if I personally would who knows what kind of cosplay I would. I have yet to. Oh no, I have Star Trek cosplay. Never mind, I take that back.
I tell you what, in the chat, which one of those is alpha? Are we going 1 or 2 for alpha? Because I'm not sure. I feel like I'm going to need to confer with my colleague AJ on this one.
I'm leaning on the cosplay.
Yeah, because it was really detailed. Like, it really, like, there was a bit of extra information in there.
Although, if you were to make something up, you would defer likely to a cosplay story, and the first one didn't have any cosplay in it. So
no, but she was out with Crosby, which is very similar to
That's true. Autocorrect.
Do you know what? I reckon AJ. I reckon number 2 is alpha.
I'm going to go with 1 because I'm feeling controversial today.
Spicy. Right. Well, we've got in the chat, Sarah thinks it's 1, David thinks it's 2, Kevin thinks it's number 2, Sabko thinks it's 2, Chippers thinks it's 1. Yeah, so very mixed bag. Put us out of our misery, Commander Brie.
All right. Well, I did meet Denise Crosby, and she was like the nicest person ever. I'd love to go get drinks with her. I actually did go out with Aaron Eisenberg's family in a cosplay that was from a Not Safe for Work anime.
Oh.
And it was a nice restaurant, too.
Wow.
It was after a convention.
Was the cosplay safe for work, or?
Yeah, it was safe enough. Yeah, it was Zombina from Monster Musume. So anyone who knows that would not be maybe the best
That's
animated
amazing.
cosplay.
That is amazing.
If
Chuck
I was going out to dinner.
Chuck had the pleasure of speaking to Aaron. Yeah, I met him at a convention a couple of years ago.
He's the nicest guy.
Really, really nice guy. Much missed. Finally, AJ, last but very much not least. Right, 2 statements. One of them is memory alpha. Hit us. Let's go.
Yes. Well, so option 1 is that have I had the opportunity to meet Kate Mulgrew in a non-Star Trek situation where drinks were involved, but not necessarily out drinking? Or was I gifted and got to interact with Wilson Cruz via a not quite cameo type situation in the last 6 months?
Chat, what do we reckon? 1 or 2 memory alpha? Let us know. Brie, what do we reckon?
I am scared to pick the first one because it's kind of similar to mine. And I feel like it could be correct, and that's why this was chosen. But I don't know. I know Wilson Cruz was doing the cameo style stuff, and I can definitely see him being totally down for not necessarily like a cameo style thing. So both of them seem real realistic to me. Yeah. I want to go with the second one because I just feel like Wilson Cruz, he was on that kick for a while where he was doing a lot of online chit-chatting with fans.
He was.
This is the problem with canon is you have to find the sources to prove which is actually correct.
It's very, very difficult. And also, AJ being the smarty pants he is, he's also had extra time as well to formulate something really, really layered. So, Brie, you're going number 2. Okay, cool. In the chat, it's almost unanimous so far.
I feel like there's some proof then that he has pictures somewhere.
Yeah, it's unanimous that it's number 1. AJ, what is it?
Well, number 1 is the truth. I got to meet Kate Mulgrew, and there are pictures out there, and I do have the chat on my screen. So, hello everyone out there in the chat. Should I have the screen?
What happened? What? Do tell.
So, I used to work with a nonprofit who had a national advocacy day in Washington, D.C., and Kate Mulgrew was the celebrity guest speaker at the national advocacy. And it was announced like less than 6 days before. So I was already 100% going to this. And it could have been, hypothetically, any celebrity who was related to this cause. And I had as a staff member, I had no foreknowledge that it was going to be Kate Mulgrew. And I just remember sitting in the chair in my living room and I scrolling just on Facebook, my personal Facebook, and I see our little corporate announcement, Kate Mulgrew to be guest honorary speaker at Thing. I'm like, and then everyone's like, what? Why are you screaming? And I was just like, oh my God, what are the chances that a Star Trek person would come to my work thing? And I was worried I wouldn't get a chance to meet her. but I took the risk of angering the high ups from our national office and fighting through the crowd to make sure I got a chance to speak to her really briefly and take a selfie. And she was just so nice. And I think I have a video of her reading an excerpt of one of her books that I've never really gone back and checked. But
that's
Kate Mulgrew, love her.
We'll just chop that bit out. That bit's the memory beta canon. That you definitely did go and read that book. It's all official canon. Well, there we go. That's the end of my really hastily put together game. I'll try and think of something else in the meantime. But back to the history and hidden stories. So we've discussed the secret pilot that never was, and how that came about and how it never was. What else have we got, AJ?
Well, so one of my favorite species are the Trill. Just in terms of Star Trek, I think even though we had Jadzia as a main character for 6 years and Ezri for 1 year, and now we've got more Trill characters on Star Trek Discovery, and the Trill are so like the recurring background details of Star Trek are what make the universe real, and that's what I love about it. And the Trill are the perfect middle ground of the makeup is super easy to do. So if the production wants to like throw a Trill in the background to prove that the Federation is not all humans, there's kind of like 3 species that the production tends to throw in the background because it doesn't take a lot. It's like Trill, Vulcan, and sometimes Bolian, which does kind of take a lot, but they really quickly emphasize, yep, this crowd of people is not all humans. So a few interesting Trill tidbits that come to mind. The Prodigal Daughter episode of Ezri Dax. I have seen a lot of people on Twitter say that that's kind of one of the maybe weaker episodes of Ezri's story.
Is that where she goes back home? Is that the one where she goes back
yes.
home?
Yes.
Right.
So she goes back episode.
Yeah,
I really like that.
That's when I realized,
episode.
I think, because that was when I stopped being so anti-Ezri. I don't know. I just felt like I loved Jadzia so much that it kind of hurt the first time I saw it. But that was like the episode when I was like, I mean, she already has enough on her plate. Now I'm like shitting on this character, so maybe not. Now I like Ezri, but obviously Jadzia is always going to be my favorite.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that one. Like the pain, I think the pain of losing Jadzia, and also
pain is what makes her not as
it was also
pull her in. Keep going.
Sorry, no, it was just an unceremonious death, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it was
like if it had been more planned and like they had nicely brought that character in instead of being like, bam, all right, get a new person in, same hair color, same eye color, they'll never know the difference.
Yeah.
It is kind of unfortunately fortunate that the character who ended up leaving the series was the person who ended up leaving the series was the character that was kind of almost designed to be she's irreplaceable, but you know what I mean there.
Could have been replaced at any point because of Trill.
Right. So that's one, like I said, one of my favorite episodes. The actor who plays her brother, I think, is really cool, and he was in some other things at Desperate Housewives. And back in the early days of the internet, when I didn't want to use my face anywhere, I would use the screenshot of his headshot as like my internet profile. He was clearly a Star Trek character, so that wasn't me, but I wasn't like catfishing people or something weird. But I like that the concept for that episode originated as that Ezri's whole family had really made their riches as like an Orion Syndicate mob boss type. That the whole family was in on it, and I wonder if that would have made her character more interesting, like that she was the only one in this whole family that wasn't aware. Oh my gosh, we're the mob, we're the mafia. So I wonder if that would have added a layer of complexity to her character, or if just the connections as they existed to the other Orion Syndicate episodes of Deep Space Nine. If that was, just always a brother and a half that was kind of involved in the controversy around murdering, I think her name was Moira?
Yeah.
Was it Moira?
Did we ever have it expanded in any of the books? Because I know that we ended up with Captain Ezri. Did it ever come up again? Do we know?
Off the top of my head, that not in Alpha canon, so to speak. I have not, and I do try to hunt down as many Trill stories as possible. I have not seen it come up. but I will defer to the chat if anyone is checking
Mm.
memory beta right now to see if
Yeah, we're
the
all
Tigan family.
we're all alpha buddies here. I sound really snobbish. I do. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, I like that episode. I recently watched that a while ago. Yeah, it's a good episode and fills in a lot of the family backstory, doesn't it? So and quite shocking as well. The essentially because in correct me if I'm wrong, AJ, but in Trill Society, the people who are joined are essentially they're like the best of the best, aren't they?
Right. So like Jadzia had multiple degrees. I thought that was really interesting. Whenever I think of like going back to school, I'm going back to school right now. But the concept of like continuing your education, when Jadzia was like a 26, 25-year-old young woman, she
Sorry,
had like
my dog just decided she wanted to try and run out of the fence.
she had like six advanced
Tina.
scientific degrees, and I thought, you know, that's something that I would aspire to. But that she had to be above and beyond to get joined. And really all of the Trill that we encounter who are joined are like above and beyond in some capacity, and they are the heads of their various elements of society, because such a small percentage of them can be joined.
I guess also the idea of there being some kind of Orion crime syndicate connections to Ezri's family would be so kind of downplayed. I wonder if there was some sort, if that came to light, if that was considered a scandal in Trill Society, or if that was maybe kind of hushed.
Yeah. Well, I think now in beta canon, I know that does become a big element of kind of Trill. There's a whole storyline of terrorism and people getting unjoined, and kind of the scare that was discussed in Symbiosis of we don't want people to be fighting over the symbionts. That if this came out, that's what would happen. And I'm pretty sure that's how kind of it plays out in some of the novels. But in terms of kind of Trill trivia, the species that I hold dear to my heart, one of the interesting things that also came out was for the Discovery episode on Trill. They hired a new person to do the Trill language, and they usually use the gentleman who does the Klingon language. He has come back to Discovery several times. I think he contributed to the Kelpian language. He contributed, I believe, to the Betelgeusian language. So kind of the beaked person who was chasing Book in the first episode of Discovery season 3. But they hired this other linguist to create a language to expand on. Here's like the 4 lines of Trill that they used on Deep Space Nine, and he was able to take all of that and expand on it into all of the what was said on Discovery. And something interesting about it was that they decided that Trill language pronouns would not be masculine, feminine. They would be joined, not joined. So even in the language, joined and not joined is a major element of how they speak to each other and interact. And I thought that was interesting. There was a good, interesting, I think it was like the Science of Fiction. I'm going to name drop them somewhere, but they tracked down the linguist who.
I guess that's interesting because that makes me wonder if Trill Society, if Trill Society is similar to ours in the way that we've developed and evolved, if there was maybe the same sort of kind of discrimination that we've experienced amongst genders over the years, if there's a similar discrimination for people that are joined and people that are not joined, maybe.
From what we've seen, I think on screen, is that I don't know if discrimination is the word I would use, although I'm not the person being discriminated against. It's that they go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I would say I agree, it's probably not like a discrimination. It's more like everyone desires to be joined. So I don't even know of a good like analogy. Like I'm trying to think of something like everyone aspires to be. I mean, not everyone, but like a lot of people would aspire to be. Because that's mentioned quite a few times. Yeah,
they aspire for it, but call me a nerd all you like, but whenever I would make like an RPG character of the Trill, which is always the person I would pick, I always pick someone who's unjoined because I feel like a joined trill, like Star Trek Online, for example, an unjoined trill, I think has so much potential versus a joined trill where everybody wants to be that. But an unjoined trill, if 90% of trill cannot be joined, then there's any number of reasons that could contribute to that. Maybe it's like a simple biological thing. Maybe their scores in school just didn't quite add up perfectly or something like that. But I think there's a lot of depth into an unjoined trill and what that character would look like. The linguist who created the trill language for Forget Me Not, by the way, was Nick Farmer.
Okay, there we go. There's another awesome fact and hidden history for us there. Thank you very much, AJ. Brie, Star Trek is rich. There's a lot of stuff in Star Trek. It's old and it's full of awesome stuff. Of all of the Star Trek that you've seen in the time that you've been a fan, what would you say is... What would you like to see fleshed out, whether through a video game or a book or another series or a movie? What part of the Star Trek franchise...
Did you know the answer? Because I talk about it all the time.
Well, yeah, do tell.
I want the temporal Cold War expanded so badly. That's something I talk about, and I've talked about so many times on this channel, how much I desperately want that. And I was praying that, like, it would be brought... I mean, it was brought up. It was brought up, I'll give them that much, in the new season of Discovery. But I was, like, sitting there theorizing the whole time leading up to Discovery season 3 or 4 is the one that just came out. I always get confused. 3. Yeah, Discovery season 3, like, leading up to that, I was putting out all these theories about, it's around it's the perfect time for the temporal Cold War. Like, maybe, give it take some time. There still might be some stuff going on. And, like, at best, we got the episode that talks about the Guardian of Forever, and he mentions the Cold War, the temporal Cold War, and it was mentioned in, like, episode 2 when they say, why they don't do it. But I want so badly for, like, an actual series or something that's just the temporal Cold War, because I think there's so much stuff that just never got a chance to get expanded because the show because Enterprise got canceled too soon. And I loved the story. I mean, I like the Xindi War arc a lot too, but I like the temporal Cold War because it's like there was no conclusion to it. Like, there's so much out in the air still that they could, and it's not like they gave hard facts about too much of it other than it took place over lots of timelines because it depended on who was from what timeline. I mean, you can always toss that into Star Trek and it could be canon and relevant to whatever time you're in. And I'm just really surprised that they still haven't done that, because there's just so much that could be talked about. And because I know a lot of people want the Romulan War, and that's like the one everyone goes to. Everyone's like, I want to see the Romulan Earth War. But that one's just, yeah, okay, everyone wants to see that. I want to see the temporal Cold War. That's just one of those things that I wish they had expanded on. Especially since, and I know we're talking about like beta alpha canon, there was that mention, I think it was, or it was like somewhere in an interview or a discussion, they said that after a while they determined they wanted Archer to be the future man, and that was what they were going to end up writing it as. And I would have loved to see something like that come out. Like, what made him want to make all these changes in his past? Why did he have change of heart? Why did he try and do this? Why did he try and do that? There's all these things that are just left unanswered that I think would be great to expand on.
Yeah, definitely. And we've got Tim, Paul, and Charles. They're all in agreement with you, and I think myself and AJ we're in agreement too. I mean, the cancellation of Star Trek Enterprises. Yeah, let's moan about it a little bit more, because I'm always up for a good old moan about how. Yeah, I know.
I love that
it's
show.
So
I hate
annoying.
that people.
I know. But look, let's. I mean, with Star Trek in the condition that it's currently in, I mean, the possibilities truly are endless. We did get references to the temporal Cold War in season 3 of Discovery. But let's say, okay, and this probably should happen, all right, Brie? Let's say CBS come up to you and they go, here's $1 gajillion and here's a pen. Write the next chapter in the temporal Cold War. What would it look like to you? What would you do? How would you take the storyline?
If I was going to start a series, I would start it probably in the time that Daniels is from, but not with Daniels to start with. Like, I think he would be someone that could come in. He's not the main point of the Temporal Code War. He's an agent. And as much as I think he's a cool character and I'd like to see him pop up, I think it's one of those things he could be like a guest star on. I'd like to see more like, starting with like a mission. Like, why is it that this Cold War started? What maybe the beginning of the Cold War, like what initiated that first spark? Why did so many factions start forming? Maybe just like the first chapter for me would be not answering those questions, because I think it would be, less exciting if everything got answered in season 1, but setting up the questions, like putting hints out as to why these things were happening. And I just think starting it off there's so much story you could expand on, and you're not hard locking yourself into anything right away. Just giving maybe the side of one faction and then giving the side of another faction in another season or something. And maybe they're all fighting for the same thing and they don't realize it. And, there's the bigger, another player or something that, is manipulating everyone. There's so many ways you could go about that.
I think you've just given me an amazing idea. Before Discovery became the Discovery that we know, we knew that it was going to be this anthology show. We knew it was going to kind of tackle different eras and different crews and things like that. Now, I still feel like that's a solid idea. And what if you were to wrap that around this kind of veneer of a temporal Cold War that's happening, that's the overall arc. But what you could also do is, and The Wire proved this, is you can tell very different stories that are all kind of intertwined into one overall kind of conflict. So it can be done. It can be done. I really like that idea. I think it needs to happen. Amir Al-Hadwan, thank you very much again for the super chat. In regards to Trills, isn't it like half the population can be joined but was kept a secret due to low number of symbionts? That's true, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. That was brought up in...
Symbiosis.
It was Next Generation, or not Next Generation, TNG, because Jadzia's host that was the one that was kept secret. I can't remember the name.
Duran.
Yeah.
Played by Jeff Magnus McBride.
Yeah, they were like, nothing bad happened. So that just means that there are more can be joined. It's just it's not the people they want to be joined, and that's what it comes down to.
Interesting. AJ, just ask Brie for her exploration of Star Trek. You're someone that you contribute heavily to Memory Alpha. So I'm gonna ask you a slightly different question. With all that you've added to Memory Alpha over the years, with all of your contributions, which thing would you like to expand upon? What would you like to take from the pages of Memory Alpha and turn into something that we get on our screen, or maybe something that we play or experience?
Kind of like, so that's such an interesting question. So kind of like take a one-off Alien and build off of that, or take an idea and build off of that? Because I have always said, like, for 10 plus years, so I went to undergrad for education to be a high school social studies teacher. And I have, before I went to college, I have always dreamed. And so this is not exactly answering your question, but if it is,
it's so good.
I have always dreamed of, if there's any Harry Potter fans out there, J.K. Rowling wrote 2 kind of sort of 3 side books about the history of Quidditch and Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. So they're kind of like textbooks from an in-universe perspective. So if I could take a Star Trek thing and expand on it, I have always dreamed of the concept of writing a social studies textbook from within the Star Trek universe, and then selling it in real life. Like that could be a published reference work, kind of like the history of Quidditch. So that's the thing I would love to build on, because I think Star Trek has such a rich history of those kind of one-off references, like
Transporter Psychosis.
Like
Put that one in.
And there's so much. Yeah, that's just something they should be teaching in
Transporter Psychosis.
School.
Yeah.
Like you should be aware of what not to do and all the different animals. And I just think, what does a 3rd grader on Earth learn about in 2365? Like they must not just be learning about the form of government in their home state. They must also be learning about comparative governments across planets of the Federation, across the galaxy. You got to learn about what's going on Kronos. And there was a line from one of the Jerry Taylor novels about Captain Janeway's background that always stuck with me, was that young Captain Janeway was learning like advanced calculus in like second grade. And just this concept that by the 24th century, we're teaching our kids, like kids learn similar things that we learn now, but much faster and much earlier. So that is the little twig of Star Trek I would like to personally expand on if I was handed a pen by Paramount CBS. Does that answer your question, or were you like a plot line you wanted to build?
No, it does, and it's kind of filled my head with a load of ideas now. And I know that obviously we've got a large slate with loads of projects that are coming, and the universe is set to expand significantly over the next 5 years. However, the idea of them turning a textbook into a series or a movie. Love it. I mean, they've done that in the Harry Potter universe with Fantastic Beasts. They've managed to turn essentially a textbook into like 3 movies. We will talk about the quality of those 3 movies another time. But no, I mean, the idea of potentially taking like the technical manual, which I believe in universe, the Enterprise's technical manual was written by Montgomery Scott. So what if we had like, I don't know, a series following the architect of the Constitution class, or the team of people that put those ships together. What about if we had a show which chronicled the daily struggles of the Federation's president? Some sort of like West Wing in the Star Trek universe kind of show. These are all just ideas. I mean,
all of these are my favorite Star Trek novels, by the way. You just described Starfleet Corps of Engineers and Articles of the Federation, which is the engineering adventures of a ship that's specifically designed to solve engineering problems, and essentially the West Wing set in the Star Trek universe. So
I'm kind of sad because I'm so
Someone
poorly.
did it for.
Yeah, I'm so poorly read. I don't even know what books are. But there we go. All my ideas were stolen. There we go. AJ, we need another awesome little tidbit. We've covered the Trill. We've covered the secret pilot that never was. What have we got next?
So Mike Sussman. It was, I think, one of the contributors to, I think it was Late Voyager and Enterprise, that contributed a lot of my favorite elements. Like, he was a Star Trek fan, and he knew how to, the best writers, in my opinion, know how to not just throw fan service in, but weave elements of Star Trek history authentically into good storytelling. So I completely, I think he just did a fabulous job in his years. And one of the I found it interesting, was that when they were forming the concept of Andoria, he picked in the Star Trek production offices, they had one of the RPG books from the late 90s, early 2000s, which was the first to really suggest that Andoria was this frozen wasteland of a planet, and it explained the background of their. We had always known, going back to the materials for Journey to Babel, that the Andorians are a very aggressive, warlike species. But Among the Clans is the name of the RPG book. Do I have it here? Oh, I do. I was prepared. This is the book. This is the cover, tilted the right way, that inspired, well, this is what Andoria could look like. And there's little bits of elements that started off as a book, started off as, Star Trek production had no reason to use any of this. And there's a lot of novels out there that Star Trek production doesn't, the writers aren't expected to keep up with all of that. And it was before, wikis made that a little easier. But this was the inspiration for the Andorian wasteland, the kind of ice-covered planet. This was the inspiration for their honor battle, and even the written language that was developed for the RPG books has found its way into Star Trek a few times, although it hasn't been it hasn't confirmably been as the Andorian written language, even though for the books it's supposed to be the Andorian written language. But it's on the so what started off as a published book, someone created the font, so it was out there on the internet, and at some point, the people who make Star Trek, the production team, tracked down a font that the fans or a writer created, downloaded that, and then put it into the show. So I think that loop is really, really interesting because it started off on Enterprise. I think it was Dikendi 3, the episode from Stigma where there's an international or interplanetary medical exchange conference, and T'Pol is secretly trying to find information about her Panar syndrome. The banners on Dikendi 3 include the Andorian language that was created for the RPG books. And then even going back to Star Trek Picard, right now, the Stardust City Rags, the bar has bottles that have the Andorian written language that was created for this. So not necessarily the Andorian written language that was on the panels for Shran's ship, but there's this other language that kind of started off as almost pseudo non-canon that worked its way into the universe, that now it's among the font files that Star Trek production integrates here and there. And it all started off as really creative, these role-playing guides. And I think there's a lot of interesting role-playing guides that have filled in the parts of the Star Trek universe that we haven't had a chance to go back to. And that's, I think I mentioned, one of my favorite parts of Star Trek is the consistency of bringing back these cool minor species. So like the Denobulans and the Trill, and we can like incorporate the Betazoids in the background. But we have like one episode on Betazed, and then very rarely learn anything else about that. Like the novels do a bit of filling in of what that looks like. But some of the RPG books create a very interesting dynamic for those alien planets, because they want to provide people with, if you wanted to create a Betazoid character, you need to know more than just the one episode that was on Betazed.
It's so amazing, really, when you consider just how much input has been put in to the Star Trek franchise over the years. I mean, everybody goes, yeah, it's Gene's vision. Yes, he did come up with the central premise and the thing that became Star Trek, but the amount of people that have come in since and have worked on Star Trek, in any capacity, if it's writing the episode, having some input in the story, having some input in the universe, creating the sets, just so many people, a universe of people have left their mark on Star Trek, and in the craziest ways as well, from writing an RPG, guide and a book, and having that, enter the official universe, enter the lore in the smallest and most subtle ways. And I really truly believe, and I might be biased because I've got Trek on my cap, but this is one of the richest universes in all of fiction, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, there's a lot of...
I think one of the only... Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I think one of the only ones that would rival it would be Lord of the Rings. Because Tolkien just put in so much care, and there's really... any question you have is going to be answered somewhere in one of Tolkien's books. But that's probably the only other fandom I can think of that has quite that much world building to the point where anything you want to know can be answered. Or created entire languages and like all this other stuff. That's the closest I can think of. I think those two would be right on par.
Absolutely. I would. I'd probably add in Dune into that as well.
Dune, yeah.
Yeah.
That one's a good one.
Yeah. We do have a super chat from Inner Fire Studios. Thank you so much. $4.99. Thank you very much. Just because an idea has been thought of before doesn't mean you can't put your own unique twist on it. I'm hoping that you're referring to my wonderful Star Trek ideas there. Thank you very much. But what you have done is you've got me thinking, and I'm going to go around the room again, starting with you, Brie. No pressure. But with everything in the Star Trek universe, we've talked about what we would add to. Take something from the Star Trek universe now and put your own unique twist on it.
Jeez. I don't know. Hold on.
Oh, unique twist.
Yeah.
Because I'll give you like, so going back to what we were talking about earlier, the Trill. When the Trill were introduced, the Trill were very different to how we saw them before. In their next appearance, physically completely different. Now you can headcanon that, and you can just say that, you know, the original host was perhaps of a different species, and we've seen that kind of be answered kind of in universe now. So I guess if there was something that you could change, or if there's something that you could modify, the universe is in your hands, Commander Brie.
If I change something, someone's not gonna like it. I don't know.
That's the way it is.
Yeah. Change something. I honestly don't know.
This is potentially, the Star Trek universe is perfect.
Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that has ever happened in Star Trek where I'm like, oh, God, I hated that. Like, why can't that have happened like this?
I'll give you mine as to kick us off, right? So the thing that I would always like to change in the universe.
Oh wait, I know what to change. What am I talking about?
Go.
I want the ending of Enterprise to change, but everyone wants that.
What would you, and they all lived happily ever after?
No, but I do actually really like the idea, and it's funny that I actually got put on the recording of that video, is that the beta canon solution for why Trip didn't actually die, which is that his death was
Spoiler
fake.
alert.
Well, for the books, if you wanted to. This is something that I knew existed, but I didn't know where it existed. I just knew it was somewhere in beta canon. But yeah, now I'm knowing it was like in some books, like 4 or 5 books. It brings up this topic, but I would like to see that beta canon get changed to alpha canon, and Trip actually have, you know, faked his death and worked for Section 31, and that's why he died so unceremoniously there. And that I would like to see changed to an actual alpha canon, because I hated this ending.
Do you know what, Brie? Let's be real. It's alpha canon in our heads, isn't it?
It is.
There's no way Trip died in that last episode.
He's not.
He's cool. He's having pecan pie somewhere, hopefully with T'Pol.
Yes.
The one thing that I would change before we get to you, AJ, is I would always have the Enterprise not be the Excelsior class. That's something that's kind of always like been. I would have had a different design. I'm not being particularly constructive here because I don't know what it would look like, but I would come up with something completely different. We'd seen the Excelsior on a number of occasions in previous movies and TV shows, and I think in Generations they had the opportunity to do something totally different, and that's what I would have done. So there we go. That's my spin on the Star Trek universe. AJ, what would you do? What would you change? What would you twist if you could?
Voyager is always my favorite. So if I had to pick one thing, I would like to have revisited the Equinox survivor, like the 3 or 4 people from the Equinox who Voyager rescued and like integrated into their crew, and then overall, if I were to conceptually change something, both Voyager and Enterprise especially, I wish we were a bit more consistent with our background character. Like Enterprise was half the crew of Voyager, and I feel like they were less consistent with their background crew than they were on Voyager, who, at least when they brought back like named people like Shell and Vorik, it was intentional. But Enterprise, I didn't feel like there was maybe like 1 or 2. There was she died. That's why
Phlox is the girl that was kind of interested in Phlox. Yeah.
But so the reason they couldn't bring her back was the actress.
She passed away, right? The actress actually passed away.
Oh, she did?
Yeah, I think it was a car accident, right?
Oh, no.
Waymire? That doesn't sound right.
I think it was a car accident during like the later part of the seasons. Yeah.
So I think, I do think there was an intention to bring her back. And it just didn't work out. So that's unfortunate. But in general, you've got a crew that's about half the size of Voyager. I would have liked, and maybe Enterprise would have eventually gotten more of a lower deck style episode.
I feel like Enterprise had a few, because I'm also, now that I'm thinking about it, there was also the one guy that for a few episodes, I mean, it was a few episodes, but took over for Trip. But also Seth MacFarlane guest starred a few times. He was a background actor. So, I mean, they have like three or so that at least get brought up occasionally. But yeah,
More. I want more.
Voyager definitely did more. Like they had the sisters, the twins. They had Vorik. They had but I don't know. I feel like I don't know. I feel like they were kind of on par with the amount.
Well, there we go. I'm sure we would have seen it if we would have had that secondary hole added. Yeah, there we go. Well, right, okay. We literally just mentioned a car accident in like 2 minutes ago. We need to end this on a high. We've been talking history, hidden stories, but I want to kind of go a little bit kind of meta. Final question, Commander Brie, AJ Halliwell. What is your all-time favorite Easter egg in the Star Trek universe? What thing have you seen on screen and you've gone full Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the screen and it's your favourite small little detail? Who wants to go first on that?
Small detail, like most people didn't notice it, or small like recurring detail that was blatant on the screen.
No, just I mean, it can either be something that was on the screen, or it can be a thing that you literally just went, oh, you know, and lost and nerded out about.
I mean, if we're using the term nerded out, the fact that the Voyager J was on Discovery, like when
cool.
the Voyager J comes onto the screen, I screamed in real life.
Class.
Oh, I love it. And I've rewatched that clip. I used to have a tweet that was a video of just that clip that I would have play on repeat, and I have to track it down because the YouTube clip of that scene is a little bit longer and doesn't repeat quite as smoothly. But the Voyager J was just...
And then when they did the little kind of... There was a couple of notes from the Voyager theme as they showed the J as well. And you're just like, oh.
My heart.
Yeah, that one was good. That whole scene with the ships was good. But now that you're thinking... Like, now that you guys have me thinking of the newer Trek, I am remembering, I'm like, you know what? In Lower Decks, when they brought back I'm guessing it was the children of Captain Janeway and Paris that were on that ship.
Open to interpretation.
I lost my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, that has to be their children, and it has to be. Like, they just left them on that planet. Starfleet probably was like, But I don't know. That's what the one I got excited about, because I saw that and I was like, hey.
I think my favourite Easter egg is in that very same episode, actually. There's a guy in the background whose head is kind of half exploded. And it looks almost exactly like Praxis. And I was just like, oh my god! If that's a reference, then
the person in the beep chair, the radiation, like that one was just so full of like bad things that have happened to people in Star Trek, and like, you know, just that one was just one of my favorites. Like all the transporter accidents.
Lower Decks is perfect at including the right amount of funny for anyone, but also like the minorest background references that we'll appreciate.
Absolutely.
Or the thing where she was like pointing at all the references. It was
yes,
like Always
conspiracy
Sunny in
wall.
Philadelphia, conspiracy wall, but it had like all the little things from Star Trek. Like Lower Decks definitely does a great job of including just enough Easter eggs for like hardcore fans to just freak out, and not so much like in the basis of the story to put other people off of it. It's a really good show.
There we go. Well, CBS, we expect a check in the post. Go watch Star Trek Lower Decks if you haven't already. Guys, we're all about out of time. The time has flown by. We have covered Star Trek history, hidden stories, Easter eggs, what is and what isn't canon. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we go, Brie, Commander Brie, where can you be found on the internet?
I can be found on Twitter and Instagram with the cosplay girl. Though the one on Instagram has underscores in between the words. The one on Twitter is just the cosplay girl with an underscore at the end. So, I mean, for the most part, if you search it, I'm usually one of the first ones that pops up.
Go find Brie if you haven't already. AJ Halliwell, where can you be found on the internet?
Too many places, but also specifically Twitter, AJ Halliwell. That's where I tend to post my random Star Trek thoughts and ramblings as I'm scrolling through those old books on the Internet Archive. Like, whoa, guys, did we know this happened? So at AJ Hallowell.
It's been absolutely amazing having you join us this week. Thank you so much to both of you. You can find me on Twitter at TrekLad. And also do, if you haven't already, give Trek Central a follow on Twitter as well, at The Trek Central. Don't forget to go to trekcentral.net for all of your Star Trek news. You have been awesome. I have been the Trek Lad. We will see you next time here on Trek Central Weekly. Until the next time, stay happy,